was just watching a story on the news about a group of protesters in New York yesterday crossing the Brooklyn Bridge on their way to Wall Street. Now, yesterday was Sunday, so I think it was quite polite of them to be exercising their right to civil disobedience and protesting against corporate greed. You know, Wall Street's closed on Sunday, so that's why I think it was rather polite of them to do it on a Sunday. Anyway, the police took exception to this, and some of them did, probably more than some by the sounds of it, but many of them did wander onto the road part of the bridge and off the sidewalk. There were thousands marching. 700 of them were arrested. You know, and I have a bit of a hard time with that, because we saw this similar process happen here in Canada during the G20 that was held in Lake Country and then in Toronto last year. You know, when you arrest 700 individuals for protesting, just think of the cash factor involved there, the police time, what we're going to have to go through in an already overtaxed court system. You know, we're going to waste our time with 700 minuscule court cases that probably the majority will be thrown out. I know the ones that happened in Canada at the G20 in Toronto, was over 1,100 arrests, less than 300 were actually charged, and the last I looked at those 300, close to 2/3 of those charges had been thrown out. But we still wasted a heck of a lot of money and time, court time, playing with this so that government could look good. You know, that's an ideology thing. So we're now starting to see that in the States too, over the over corporate greed, and we're seeing corporate greed all over the place. You know, we're seeing it happen here in Canada. We have a party currently was just elected 5 months ago with a majority government. Unfortunately, because of active vote suppression, less than 61% of the possible voters actually voted. So we gave Prime Minister Harper a majority with 26% of actual voters, and he keeps telling us he was given a strong mandate to tackle the economy. The man has a degree, has a master's in economics, so, you know, let's give him a little bit of credit for that. What does he do? He turns around and lowers. We now have the lowest tax rate really in the modern world. There's 5 other countries with lower corporate taxes. But I mean, who wants to open a business in Uganda? That's the type of thing we're competing with. But then he turns around this summer, 4 months after the election, and enters into a $20 million contract with Deloitte, a consulting firm, to advise him on how to get our budget back to being balanced. You know, why did we have an election? You know, we elected these people to do a job, not to go out and contract more out to the public, to the private sector and their corporate buddies. We're seeing this happen in the States as well. You know, I understand ideology, but we didn't vote a bunch of people in to have a minority group of ideologies thrown down our throats. We're seeing the same thing in the States. You know, the whole thing, I don't understand the American political system as well as I understand Canada's, but I do have some insight into it. And I tend to leave American issues alone because I don't live there. You know, I live in Canada. But what happens in the States does affect Canada and affects the rest of the world. And from what I can see, I'm not coming down on either side of the fence for Obama, but from what I can see down there, you've got a political system that is so tied up in ideological fighting that nothing is getting done. I could say the same thing is happening here in Canada. The only difference is our political system allows a small minority of individuals, which happens to have the majority of power in the government, to conduct whatever ideologically based change as they want, and it's all geared for big business. Case in point, Nortel used to be a huge company into electronics and this type of thing. In fact, I think they're auctioning off over $60 million worth of their patents in the wireless industry. Okay, we still have corporate heads with that company that are receiving $3, $4, $5 million bonuses. Meanwhile, every employee that was there has been screwed out of their pensions. None of them are getting their pensions. Those that were on disability for work-related illnesses, they're not getting that anymore either. You know, so this is corporate sponsorship in its worst, and I'm tired of it. We're seeing it in the States. You know, if people want to practice civil disobedience to get their point across, because obviously it's not happening at the election poll, then that's what we have to do. There's going to be another march, as I understand it, in New York, and I also heard on the news that there's one coming to Canada down on Bay Street. And it's about time, because why do we have governments that are giving all of these breaks to large corporations, not to small business, by the way. In Canada, it's not the small business, they're the job creators. They don't get the tax breaks. Large businesses, the multinational corporations, the profit takers, they're the ones getting the huge tax breaks. You know, it just drives me nuts, and yet we're seeing it happen over and over and over, and I can't stand it much longer. I don't blame these people for protesting. Civil disobedience is what led to the United States. Do you think the Boston Tea Party was nothing? That was an act of civil disobedience, and it took you towards your own country. Canada, would you think Canada would exist if it hadn't been for civil disobedience along the way? No, you'd have two more countries up here, one French, one English, or we'd all be part of the States, one of those three options. But civil disobedience has played its role in the past, and by the looks of it, we have to start doing it again. You know, I'm angry at this. I'm seeing stupid things happen around constantly to programs so that corporations, major corporations, can get a bigger slice of the pie, and they're really not creating jobs. That's what upsets me the most. They're not creating jobs. You people in the States, I feel bad for you because you've got nothing to help you get jobs. You've got two parties down there. Actually, you've got three now, from what I can see, because the Tea Party really has to be considered a third party now. And you've got 20% of them screwing the other 80% of your country. You know, ideology-based arguments in governments should not stop the country from moving and making change, neither in Canada nor in the States. So if we have to resort to civil disobedience, then by God, I'm all for it, and I'll be out there marching with them. If our government wants to throw away money on useless things like arresting protesters just so they can release them, and that is a huge waste of money, as I understand it, that protest on Sunday was peaceful, then, by God, we're getting back to the 1920s, and I don't want to see that happen. Anyway, that's it from me right now. One man's opinion. I'm out of here. Talk to you later. Have a good day.